Good evening, thanks for joining us on this week's wrap. We're joined by James Norris, Paul Ferguson and Roy Delagi. Evening, gents.
Evening.
Uh, we'll go straight into it. James, you were lucky enough to be there on Saturday at Ascot. Any performances take your eye, or do you want to go through the cards as a whole?
Well, yeah, it was a good card. Very disappointing in terms of numbers, wasn't it? Some interesting entries, and then almost all the races cut up quite badly. Particularly the Reynolds Down that you mentioned last week. You were concerned Virat was going to be a very short-priced favourite, have little debate, and he was very short-priced, but he disappointed quite badly, didn't he? I think he might have been affected by 2 quick races at Christmas, maybe, or just didn't like the track or whatever, because he didn't look like he'd been improving this season. And then he's had 2 quite poor runs, so that was disappointing. Deputy Dan, who'd been largely disappointing over fences so far, seemed to be improved a little bit by the blinkers. He a bit lit up, but he was going nicely, and then he made a quite bad mistake, sort of 5 out. Put him on the back foot, and essentially Ainsley Fidel just sort of came through, having been handed the race, really, because he wasn't a horse I was particularly fond of. Didn't think he was up to that much, and I'm still not sure he is, but he's won it easily enough from 2 essentially disappointing horses. And he didn't have any fancy entries, and he was quite weak in the betting, so I'm not sure the Pipes thought a huge amount of him either, but couldn't done more than he did, I suppose. But I wouldn't be keen to back him in anything really going forward unless he found another nice opportunity like that against disappointing rivals. I think a more interesting novice chaser on the card was Carol's Destrier, who I know Rory likes, and he was my capture at Cheltenham time before, and he's come out here. And his jumping was a bit novelty, I thought, for the first circuit. Garrett did a really good job of sort of keeping him going and keeping him interested, and he gradually improved during the race. And then he wound him up round the final bend, and he really took off there and passed Condor Knight, who seemed to have the race under control for a period quite easily, and went clear. And you think, sort of in a year's time, when his jumping has sort of shored up, he could quite force it in this sort of field. That was a very, very impressive performance. Certainly a horse to look out for, and the festival handicaps if he goes there. And Holden was talking about skipping it and going to Aintree, and that wouldn't be a terrible idea either, because might be best fresh in that sort of race. Obviously, the big race. Aaron, you go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, you're still both on your shortlist for Cheltenham, because I know you were Condor Night was a handicap cert which everyone had put in each way patent.
I was slightly concerned that he was running there in the first place, but it was the perfect result for me. I ended up knocking off Carl's best there in the field. A bit disappointing with the SP in the end, but the pair of them did much as I would have hoped they did. Condor Knight jumped better in the early stages. I jumped better throughout the race, really. Carlos Destro got better in that regard. But just at Cheltenham, as he did at Cheltenham rather, he was inclined not to be bold when asked for a big one. He's got a lot of scope. He's a big unit with the ability to stand outside the wings, really. But he didn't seem to want to do that at Cheltenham. He constantly got half length by the leader there. But kept on well until he finds the fight they're probably going to be too fast in front against him. And here again, I thought he'd be very bold when he was allowed to do his own thing in front. I thought the issue at Cheltenham was that he was being half length by another rival, and that was affecting his jumping. Here in a smallish field, he had the opportunity of going to the front. I think Barry wanted to do that straight away. And even though he was being taken on by Condor Knight, they were far enough apart. There was no reason for him not to take a cut at his fences. So it was a little disappointing in the early stages that he was careful and was getting into the bottom of his fences a little bit. But what it did was it concealed the superiority in the end. And he's a horse who will go on to better things. I like him a lot. Condor Knight shaped exceptionally well. I really didn't want him to win this race because it would ruin his chance of winning a Cheltenham Festival handicap. He'd gone up a lot. He'd gone up £14, £13 for winning at Weatherby, which was slightly more than I would have liked. I was looking for something like a £10 rise. And of course, if he'd won here, he'd go up again in the race, which would really matter the Kim Muir, which I think is the ideal race for him. But the fluency of his jumping and his travelling for most of this contest was really likable. His 2 best efforts now have come on soft ground, but I think he'd be better on good ground, the way he moves. and therefore the chances of getting good ground at the Cheltenham Festival and the importance of slick jumping will stand him in really good stead in the festival handicap. So in the end, this extra run has actually done him good. And he pressed on a little bit too soon because he travelled so well and jumped so well that Tom Scudder was sort of forced into that position. And he then was closed down after the last by Ballyoliver and Nick Spender, who lay a glove in any stage of the race. But the fact that he ended up not finishing too far clear of a couple of veterans means that the handicapper can't be harsh. Again, we already know he's done, but I haven't checked the new ratings. I don't really have down. I'd be disappointed if he went up in the weights for that. But a mark of 140 is absolutely fine for Kim Muir, and he just added to his lustre, if you like, in that performance. So it's a very likeable race from my point of view, because what I wanted to happen, what I expected to happen pre-race, pretty much and afterwards.
And obviously the handicap rates released next week for Cheltenham Festival, so obviously we'll be all looking to Rory again, but maybe in the Cheltenham Festival preview for some more handicap snips. James, back to you for the Ascot Chase. Another novice, Paul Nicholls, having a bit of jumping problems? Or do you write this off and happy to stay on side for something like the JLT?
I think I'd be happy enough to write that off. I mean, if you watch the race, he's actually really quite impressive how quick he was over his fences before that point. And it was just sort of just one sort of probably his first significant mistake he's made. And it might educate him, I suppose. It's never a good thing, obviously, but good to help educate him. He could find his landing gear a bit quicker next time at Cheltenham if he gets in a bit tight. But it wasn't a really heavy fall, and he ran away quite happily afterwards. He's not. It's disappointing though that he's had to do that, because I think the plan all along was to go to the Pendulum. He probably had an easy race this coming weekend, and instead he's gone hard against some more seasoned chasers, and he's come down. So obviously that's unfortunate, and you don't know what impact he'll have. But I'd be surprised if it was that significant, and I think he still deserves to be right up there in behind Vautour for the JLT in the market. Obviously, when he left the fray, it was a more open race for those in behind, and I think the first two came away with a lot of credit. All the successes, well, I was very keen on to start with as a junior hurdler, and then more recently I've always sort of felt he's not quite as good as I'd hoped, but he really doesn't do anything. It's difficult to find fault apart from, I suppose, his Cheltenham record, where he has yet to complete. Because his jumping is really good. It was impressive at Kempton. That was the thing to take out of it when he beat Foxfield, who then came out and ran so well at Ascot next time. And again, it was very solid here, and he travelled nicely and picked them off when he needed to at the end, and beat a nice mare of Nicky Henderson's. But I think it's not out of the question that she could reverse the form at Cheltenham in the Ryanair, because that's now apparently the target. And she did look like she could do with the race actually on the day. I expect she'll improve quite a lot for that, and there's potentially the more sort of stamina test of Cheltenham and quicker ground. I think she has the potential to reverse that form, and she's very interesting, I think, for the Ryanair, in my opinion, probably more so than Ball's success. Ballycasey apparently wobbled as he finished, and Ruby Walsh got off him quickly, so could be an excuse for his weak finish, but again, that was disappointing. And when Petit fell, he seemed to sort of come on the bridle quite hard and looked very dangerous, but then he sort of found nothing in the back straight, and you'd hope that's an excuse there. And really balanced today said he's still planning on going to Cheltenham. So, but before that, I thought he could be a Ryanair contender, and I think he'd probably be one I'd rule out now. Overall, I think the first two are quite solid, and you can be very positive about both.
Paul, when Graham Cunningham started quoting FUF to Mick Fitzgerald, I thought he was swearing at him, but in fact he's talking about Baldur's form at Cheltenham. I think the latest fall was in a novice chaser, and he had a race in safekeeping, and I think Chuck Thornton said he was blinded by the sun, whether that was the jockey or the horse. I'm not quite sure, but would his form at Cheltenham so far put you off him in the Ryanair come March?
Not so much when you take into account, as you say, the last time he ran there. I think it was a small field. I don't know. Rory will probably remember better than me. I don't know whether it was one of the earlier meetings when he reconfigured the course, and it was one of the Wasn't it one of the first races where he would turn into the home straight? Anyway, he got in. He definitely got in tight that day, and the excuse was the sun was playing, but he would have won that day. So you can't completely say he's not performed at the course, but he has got letters to his name, obviously, as opposed to form figures. But I'd be like James. I thought Marfield could certainly reverse that form at Cheltenham. I heard from a couple of people in the week last week that she'd need the run. I know she was supposed to, after the run at Aintree, where she was inconvenienced by the fact that all of the fences up the home straight were taken out, was jumping, especially that day, jumping's main asset. And I believe after that she was supposed to go for a mares race somewhere, and she missed that, and she'd had a little setback at home. So I think it was that race is now going to tee her up and put a spot on for Cheltenham, and I'd be probably, along with James, I'd be in the camp that I think she could reverse that form in the Ryanair.
James, back to you on the Ascot handicap hurdle on the card, which was won by Unique Ducot, he's been raised £10 to 135, so hopefully the connection to probably looking at a handicap hurdle at Cheltenham Festival now. But I was certainly impressed by the first two, Unique Ducot and Padge, and looks as though them two are going to be worth following over the next couple of months.
You've been keen on Padge, haven't you, for the EBF for a while, and I suppose he's not done himself any harm there. And I think they both made quite a few mistakes during the race, particularly the winner. So I suppose it's to his credit that he kept going and won quite convincingly. But behind those two, I think the race fell apart a little bit. But Padge, picked up well at the end and chased down a good winner. So yeah, they're definitely two to be positive about. The horse I've talked about before, Diamond King, blew out quite spectacularly. Really, apparently he bled, so hopefully there's an excuse there. But perhaps he's not going to be the horse I'd hoped he would be. And away from that, there were two other quite interesting novice hurdles, with Tifa 2 just coming unstuck against Arpège d'Allen. And I think Lizzie Kelly probably didn't kick on early enough on Tifa 2. She sort of let Samson Davis get back on her heels around the bend. But if she'd been able to claim her allowance, which she wasn't in that race, I think she would have been quite a good winner. And that does make the idea of the Coral Cup more appealing, I think, that she could be able to claim in it. But apparently the owners are still quite keen on the Albert Bartlett, and that stamina test should suit her a bit more. Should suit the horse a bit more. And also, Arpège d'Allen is going to skip the festival, according to Nichols. But 3 miles and the son of Damalco, he should stay well. And he's a half-mile to Trio to quick ground potential quick ground at Aintree. Should also be able to suit, and he could be quite a sort of tough animal to beat there. And probably take on 3 Musketeers. You want it. Warwick, if you go over, his form was a bit let down by Bala in the Albert Bartlett trial at Haydock, so he could have a decent chance there. And also, the last hurdle was a phenomenal ride by Ruby Walsh on Thistlecrack. He sort of let St Charles take on Otago Trail in front, because I think St Charles was got very, very keen. I think Ruby let them go and sat off it a bit, and then sort of hit a flat spot in the back straight, but just kept Thistlecrack going and wound up after the last and really went for it and flew home, having looked like very unlikely. And I think it was quite a good race, that, because I think St Charles, if he's less keen next time, will be very useful horse. Otago Trail, I'm not sure if Venetia's horse is running that well at the moment, so whether there's a reason he's not quite got there, or he's been challenged for the lead a bit early, or up in class, whatever. I think he's still got a good future, particularly on softer ground, maybe over further. And there was Paul Nichols' horse, I've got the name, I think it was Saradan or something like that. He travelled, great big French import, travelled into the race really well and just got done. I think got done for speed potentially at the end, or done for experience. And it was his first start in this country, and I think he's one to look out for, given the scope he should have for fences in a year or so's time.
Well, we're just touching on Tifa 2. I know we commented about the Racing UK analysis at the time, but one of the things was levied at Lizzie. Well, Tifa 2 hasn't really performed in small fields this year. Is it just a case of experience of Lizzie Kelly in tactical affairs, where normally it'd be big conditional 0 to 115 handicaps, which would be a 12-runner affair, and a 4-runner affair with a 0 to 140 rated novice hurdles is a totally different kettle of fish?
I wouldn't be overly critical of Lizzie Kelly, and it's important to understand that winning this race wasn't the be-all and end-all. And while his best, and she gave him a terrific ride to win the Lanzarote, and I know he was well in that day, but we only find that out by the way he was ridden. In a slowly run race at Newbury, he wasn't seeing the best effect before that, and he didn't jump terribly well. But given a much more prominent ride at Kempton, he's actually jumped very well indeed. Jumped like a chaser, in fairness. He wastes a little bit of time in the air, and he's quite big at his hurdles. So again, Lizzie rode him prominently, but she wasn't going to put a gun to his head in a race that didn't really matter. I know it was worth 25 grand, but they'd have their eyes in the Cheltenham Festival. They would have wanted him to win, but they wouldn't have wanted Lizzie gunning off in front to do so. So I don't think massive analysis of Saturday's race is hugely important, to be perfectly honest. Unless, if you had your mortgage on T2, then you talk all day about how the rider should have maximised his chance of winning. That's a chance you take. Remember Minora being beaten in the same race before winning the Supreme, when, again, given a slightly negative ride in front by Richard Johnson, allowing, I think it's Lush Life, to come in late in the day. And it was a similar sort of scenario here, but it won't affect his Cheltenham chances. In fact, it almost certainly helps his Cheltenham chances, because the race comes at the right sort of time and he wasn't unduly punished. So I take James's point that the Coral Cup looks an obvious race because Lizzie Kelly's claim is clearly important to her, and he would have a much better chance in whatever race he goes for with the £7 claim than he would without one. And of course, if he runs in a championship race, there'll be no claim. The other side of that, of course, is that he's shown what he can do. He was ridden to maximum effect at Kempton, and the handicappers with a very good chance of how good he is at this stage. So he looks vulnerable even if he does run on a handicap. But he's going to be a terrific horse next year in these events. The other thing is to, and I suppose they see him as a championship horse, and therefore they're liable to go for a championship race with him. You're going to have to go down that road at some stage. It does make sense utilising Lizzie's claim, but if they think he's a Grade 1 horse down the line, and he's owned in large part by Jane Williams, I'm not sure it's entirely by Jane, but runs her colours, she'll want Lizzie to ride. If they think he's going to be a Gold Cup horse, and they may well harbour that kind of dream, then they won't mind not having the £7 claim, because that's the reality they're going to be faced with. If that makes any sense.
And James, and Paul, actually, we'll touch on you, Paul, quickly on the bumper at Ascot on Saturday. Obviously, we're looking for Big Chief Benny, and a couple of our friends were involved in that horse, but lost a bit of chance at the start after being bumped. I think even the jockey got a ban for careless riding for that. But another winner who's had a couple of schooling bumpers in Ireland with Philip Hobbs' horse. Was it Wait For Me?
Yeah, it was pretty impressive, wasn't it? Yeah, it's interesting that these horses are only getting confirmed after the races that they ran in schooling bumpers. Might be interesting if they could start providing that information beforehand. But yeah, I would say though with the winner, even though how taken I was with him, he was well positioned throughout in what looked a slightly rough racing behind. So I've marked him up as a serious prospect, but I think that is certainly worth bearing something in mind. He was handy throughout, but he picked up really well and pulled away in the closing stages. I like the run of the third as well, Theo's Charm. Also Nick Giffords, who had won at Huntingdon, I think, first time out. Thought he shaped well and coming from behind. And I know Rory was impressed with the fourth.
Yeah, I agree with you with Theo's Charm. But West Approach and Theo's Charm, we both had both made winning debuts. The pair of them were poorly positioned when things picked up, and I thought that they both stayed on extremely well in the minor positions, and there wasn't much between them on the day. Both carrying the same weight, although Mickey Legg claimed second on West Approach, which gave him a bit of an edge there. But the pair of them probably won't be picked up by many, having never threatened to win the race. But given, as you've made the point, Wait For Me was receiving weight as a horse with theoretically no experience, but we find out subsequently he really did, essentially. So Theo's Charm and West Approach both giving him weight have run better races than they'll be given credit for down the line, so we're worth bearing in mind.
James, what do you think it's enough from Wait For Me to threaten the likes of another bumper winner at Ascot and Super Sunday come the champion bumper?
Well, I think that bumper Super Sunday one was a better race. I think it was a slightly better looking field as well beforehand. But it was a very impressive performance. Did it very easily. Once he sort of kicked on, it never looked in any doubt. He's by a Saint de Saint, who's also the sire of Jacadam, as one of those good French sires that sort of often creates classy runners. But I suspect he might not be up to it. But it's very difficult to say. Obviously, there was some promising behind, and second always line. Ben Pauling ran a very good race at Cheltenham early in the season. The last listed bumper, I think, behind definitely red. He'll run his race again, so that gives the form of a sort of bit of strength. But I'd still just favour Super Sunday, especially and meet Bromhead giving some good noises recently, and I still hope he's a real contender. Although since I nailed my colours to his mast, there's been unsurprisingly performers from Willie Munseyard improving and showing serious form. So it should be quite a really exciting race this year. I think Marlin's going to have about 10, isn't he, looking at it at the moment?
And Rory's had been spending a bit of time on Twitter this evening talking about Cheltenham Festival previews. You were there on the close of racing on Saturday. Was there any nuggets from Paul Nicholls and Co?
Well, also I mentioned on here before, I earmarked for Fred Winter a while ago, Bouveroy. I asked him, Paul Nicholls specifically, if he thought that was the race to go for and if they liked him. And he was very quiet. He didn't really want to talk about the horse at all. Obviously, had a plan there, and he just said, "Yep, he's aiming for the race." Went a bit red, and I asked him again, "Did he like him?" He said, "Yep." He just didn't want to expand. So I think that's quite a good sign.
Another Fred Winter winner, as well as all the three handicap snips to go with, Rory. Paul, will come to you for Haydock's card on Saturday. Obviously, it was the Sandy Thompson place double, which no doubt, I don't think Rory was on, but we'll touch on that later. But a decent enough card on Saturday, a couple of nice novice races, and a nice novice performance, I think, in second or third place from Wolf late in the card.
Gotta be honest, I was slightly disappointed with Wolf, certainly with his jumping the way. I haven't actually watched the card back on the TV yet since getting home. I spent Saturday night watching Ascot, but on course, my first viewers, I was slightly disappointed, given that the money came for him. I'm pretty sure he was straight enough despite having a year off. Well, he seemed to hang in towards his fences and things, so hopefully there'll be better to come from him. If you just quickly go through the card from the top, obviously it was quite a competitive card aside from the opening juvenile hurdle, but that was won in nice style by Top Notch. Obviously, he was entitled to win as he did, but there was a lot to like about his hurdle, and I thought he was pretty professional for a 4-year-old. I'd liked what I'd seen on TV at Ascot. He was quite a small individual when I seen him. It's the first time I've seen him in the flesh, but well put together. And certainly the way he gets from A to B, he's slick across them hurdles, and I believe he's going to have a crack at the Adonis now on Saturday. So, and then that'll give Connections a bit of a headache as to what they'll do, because whether Henderson will want to be triple-handed in the Triumph hurdle, or whether one will be held back for Aintree, but we might find out more after Saturday. See You at Midnight, who you touched on. I thought he ran well, finishing second to closing ceremony in the Rendlesham hurdle. Probably needed the run, looking at the size of him in the parade ring beforehand, and I know we touched on it off air briefly. Without disrespect to the smaller yards, you'd think maybe a yard like Sandy Thompson, if they've got one stable star like that, it mightn't be as easy for them to get such a horse up to its peak level. And quite whether they want it there at that level for this run, knowing and bearing in mind that they wanted to go on and run in a world hurdle. I thought they might have given it a bit longer and gone back to Aintree like they did last year, or even possibly Punchestown, but they have said after the race that it isn't the intention to go for the world hurdle. While looking at that race, we must touch on the dismal display of Fisher's Cross again, who is quickly spiralling. I think Timecall must possibly have a squiggle next to his name nowadays, and it's just pretty sad to see how he's gone backwards from them earlier days when he was a high-class novice. Obviously, we know he's had his back injuries and his problems with his jumping, but it was a pretty tame effort on Saturday. As I say, quite sad to see. Moving on to the Grand National Trial, Leifert goes for the Scottish National now after winning that. I didn't think it was a bad run by Monbeg Dude in third. The ground was nowhere near as bad on Saturday as it usually is during the winter at Haydock. So probably, even though the race is over 3.5 miles, 3 miles 5, it's probably sharp enough for him around there on the turn quite a bit. So I didn't think he'd done his national claims any harm. I thought the Pertemps was quite a strong race. Again, Run Ruption's run another solid race. She's a sound mare. I think she'll be winning races if she doesn't get her head in front later on this season, which she probably deserves. She'll be winning races in mares, novice chasers next year. She's definitely got the size for fences. Race in Europe, travelled well, and I'm looking forward to watching it back to see how Stonebrook got on out the back on course again. He looked like he travelled well for a long way. I'm surprised he went straight up to 3 miles for his reappearance. The fact that McCoy was on the Ferguson runner Achelim also suggested that Saturday wasn't the day for Stonebrook, but he certainly moved well for long enough as my eye could see on course. I wouldn't be surprised if he popped up at Aintree, possibly in the same race he was sent off favourite for last year.
Tom, just touching on the Pertemps, obviously there's a bit of talk on Twitter afterwards about the way that they were left at the start, and Michael Hurd used his noggin and got a bit of an easy lead. Was there any moaning and groaning from connections in the parade ring or fans in the stands?
No, there didn't seem to be honest. It just seemed a case of how have they allowed them to do that 2 weeks on the run, to be honest.
They were all happy to let them go. No one was caught up, were they? They more or less sent them ahead. Go on, Michael, we know what you want to do.
Yeah, but it seems strange that he'd allowed that, having seen what he'd done the week before in Newbury, that he'd allowed someone to go.
Unless they just wanted to finish in the first 8, of course.
Quite possibly, yeah. There's always that option. Moving on to the novice hurdle, the stairs novice hurdle, I thought that was quite a strong event, and definitely read. It certainly improved for the step up in trip. Fletcher's Flyer, I know it's an old adage, but probably lost little in defeat, conceding £3, I think it was. I actually expected a little bit more from Bala. James just touched on the fact that he let the Three Musketeers fall down a little. I thought he travelled well again, down the back straight and into the home straight. I think he probably wants to drop him back to 2.5 after that. There certainly should be a race to be won with him before the end of the season, but I'd be keen to see him drop back to 2.5 because he moved well. But the three of them looked well beforehand, and certainly be winning races over fences in time. I think Harry Fry's come out this week and said Fletcher's Flyer will definitely go for one of the Grade 1 3 miles, whether it'll be the Albert Bartlett or the Sefton at Aintree, or even Punchestown. He haven't made up the mind, but I think that was pretty strong in the race, and definitely Red kept on well to the line.
Rory, obviously we're going to touch on the Sandy Thompson Lovin, which is becoming a regular section on this Wraps now. Paul just mentioned there about see you at midnight, and probably with the World Hurdle in mind and how he's going to be brought steadily along. You got the impression that this was Harry the Viking's day, given the way that he's been handled since he's gone to the Sandy Thompson yard after leaving Paul Nicholls?
Yeah. Well, he may still have had a day. He was a fancy horse. He's clearly quirky, and it's taken Sandy a little bit of time to get to know him. He wasn't at all promising on his debut. I thought, my initial reaction when I saw the move is that this horse could be rejuvenated and become a Grand National horse again. He's been raised to 132, but his Grand National prospects are still in terms of handicapping. But he's looked a lot happier in his last 2 starts. He needs to be allowed to do his own thing, and Derek Fox seems to get him. He loses his place in his races, but he doesn't sulk. And aside from one incident where he allowed the horse to jump very close to the inside and he hit the wing of the fence, he got a good tune out of him, and he seems to be getting his confidence back as well. That's twice he's run a similar race, kept to the inside at Kelso and at Haydock, chasing home life for it both times, getting closer to him on this occasion, getting in front of him briefly in the run-in, but finding that battler just had enough time to respond to his challenge. But that's a step up in his last 3 starts now. The Scottish National seems a really obvious race for him. We know he stays 4 miles. He was second to Team 3 in the National Hand Chase. your slight worry with him is that in a big field he still has the ability just to drop it and say, I don't fancy being messed around here. He probably needs a little bit of room to do his own thing. He's quite he's a very good jumper, but he's a little over bold at his fences, and he just gets away with it. But still manages to make ground through the yard a lot of it. You get the impression that if he's crowded out of it, he could run poorly again. But at the same time, he's a horse who hasn't lost much of his old ability, and it's just a case of hoping that everything drops right from one of the big staying handicap chases. And given where Sandy trains in Lamb, the Scottish National looks an obvious plan for him. So I wouldn't lose faith. He's clearly never one you could back at a short price. If he runs in a weaker race next time out, you'd be a little bit wary of backing at 2-1 or thereabouts. But he's the kind of horse you can always back at 20s and upwards in a competitive handicap chase. And Haydock National Trial was a very good race on paper, and he's given the position he was in at halfway, he's run an exceptionally good race to finish second. Not good enough for me, who was on win only, but encouraging.
And it shows you the benefits of races reopening as well, because I don't think Emma Lavelle was looking at the Rendlesham before the race had reopened for closing ceremony, and got a nice little sneaky entry there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the closing ceremony is a world hurdle course, but he grabbed his opportunity there, and despite getting the wrong race to a large degree, he's kept on really nicely. Again, I agree that I can see you at midnight and horse take from the reins. I expected him to need the run badly, and he appeared to blow up at one stage, but then kept on again. I thought that was hugely encouraging. The same comments apply as Paul said about the Fisher's Cross. He's been called a few names now, but essentially he's just a horse who hasn't got the strength to hold his frame together. He's got all sorts of physical issues, and they keep trying to get him back. He's one of those that, if you run him often enough, he'll get strong enough in his muscles that he'll be able to overcome the little issues he has. But it's very difficult to do that, and slogging him around in soft ground doesn't help him either. I wouldn't be surprised if he bounced back if we have a decent spring. You can't see him making any sort of mark in the world hurdle, but he's not necessarily completely gone. But you can't back him with any confidence. It's sad, again, as Paul says, it's sad to see a horse of his ability struggling so badly in a race of that nature.
James, Paul, off there, you both talked about fighting for an eye catcher. Away from just today's, and we'll touch on that in a second, was there any other performances in the week which took your eye, James?
Well, obviously it was impressive in the Kingwell from Blue Heron to beat Irving. That Faheen form has been, from Christmas Earl's form, has been boosted quite comprehensively there, and again it shows how good Dan Skelton is at targeting these races and having his horses at concert pitch for them and doing exactly what he hopes for. It was interesting the way that there was battle for that rail up the straight in a couple of races, including the first, and Schofield managed to grab it in the first race, but managed to lose it and get a ban, and failed to get it in for Irving and lost the race as well. So that was slightly unsuccessful, but he was obviously more successful on Southfield Vic, who was well fancied at Cheltenham in the handicap hurdle won by Rolling Moore, I think. And he didn't seem to find a lot when he was travelling okay at top of the hill, but this time he sort of beaten up inferior rivals there, and that was quite an impressive performance, and he could be a horse for the staying handicap hurdles at the end of the season. Possibly at Aintree, maybe away from Aintree if he's not quite up to that. But that was a smart performance. Another performance I think I liked in Ireland was on the fringe in a Hunter Chase. Prince de Beauchesne won the race. Southside travelled well in front, but I think on the fringe picked up nicely, and he's done well in that race before at Cheltenham, and I think he's quite an interesting contender, especially when T for3 at Haydock was supposed to qualify, and I thought if he did qualify, it would look a good thing for that Hunter Chase, but he failed to qualify, and obviously the race came too soon, and I think it's now quite an open race. And another contender I like, Paint the Clouds, won today at Doncaster, so the race is shaping up a bit better than it had looked recently anyway.
Rory, I don't know if you've had a chance to look back at the Wincanton card. What were What were your thoughts on Harry Skelton's ride in the Kingwell?
I think he could have saved himself a little bit of bother by doing a little less looking around before he moved across the rail and a bit more kicking for home early, to be perfectly honest. I was screaming for him to do so, looking at the TV, because again, I thought the winner had a cracking chance in the Kingwell. I think he's a horse who's been underrated all season, and you look at the strength of his form, and he's a horse who shouldn't have gone under the radar the way he has. And he stays very well, and he's a very difficult horse to pass. And I think Harley was always going to take that line into the straight. I just think he could have got the jump and saved any potential stewards inquiry by getting across a little earlier than he did. But maybe that was part of his plan. Maybe he wanted to draw Nick Schofield into trying to go there before cutting him off, which is, depending who you talk to, is just a clever piece of race riding, or it's a punishable offence. But there's certainly no hard luck stories for Irving in the race, and it's much, surprisingly enough, what I expected again from a few of this weekend, even getting the hang of things. So again, I don't know where you go with the winner. The Champion Hurdle is a step too far. Right-handed track is not necessary, but seems beneficial. These small field affairs are always going to suit. The eye catcher for me elsewhere, if you're asking that question in a roundabout way, is an absolute no-brainer. And I've just seen the handicap mark on Scott as well, and I'm going to ask you about it. Art Camper.
Oh yeah. Oh, you got a handicap mark.
One at Market Racing.
Yeah.
Sunday. Do you know what handicap mark he's been given?
And I'm sure he's been given. Was it 114?
He's been given a mark of 117. It's 25 pounds too low.
But yeah, but it won't account for Sunday's win.
No. He's been given a mark of 117 after some. Oh no, good point. You're right.
No, next week, on it.
But yeah, but
that appears. So no, actually, that's. Hold on, that's.
It must have been that he must have been entered in a handicap hurdle this week.
He's been given that mark on Sunday because this is the one week of the year that the handicappers do things differently. Because of the closing of the entries for the Cheltenham handicaps. So they actually do look at Sundays. So I've just double checked that. 117 is the mark he's been given yesterday.
Well, he wins about
the mark he had from the meeting. That is, I mean, it's not going to get him into any Cheltenham Festival handicap, obviously, but it's an absolute stone bumping certainty to win at least two before the handicap and catch the mark, because that's completely the wrong way. He's got to be 135 plus horse, isn't he?
Yeah, easy. The one issue I'd think about the mark was because he has finished fourth and third. Then they could have.
Yeah, no, but I've just checked whether that mark was there last week and it wasn't.
Ah, well, there you go. 117 to snip.
It's Sunday, which absolutely blows my mind.
Well, there's another handicap snip which we've got from Maury.
For me, that's a massive clanger. I know, strictly speaking, you could talk your way into suggesting the Market Racing race wasn't particularly strong, but given his bumper form, the handicapper never looks at bumper form when trying to assess a horse over hurdles, which makes no sense to me. If you know a horse has got form in a top-class bumper, as our camper did, run a storm, he ran a cracker at Cheltenham in a listed race, and ran a storm at Aintree as well. So we know that he's not far off the best of his generation. It's taken him a couple of runs to get his act together over hurdles for various reasons. He would have needed to run at Doncaster last time, and I don't know what the issue was on his debut when he just didn't seem to get his running. But he's bolted up on Sunday. There's an awful lot more to come from him. As I said pre-season when I spoke to Paul about him, everything about him last year suggested he was just a shell of the horse he'd become. He's going to be even better next season, and Charlie's going to have fun facing him on that one.
Yeah, I think Paulie'd have been one certainly which you'd have took out from the Aintree bumper last year.
Yeah, definitely, and to see the physical development he made from when I seen him in Cheltenham in March and Aintree in April, and then to see him when I think it was either late September or early October at Charlie's Open Day, the development he made over the summer was incredible, and I was slightly surprised that it's taken him 3 goes to get off the mark. But fair play to Rory. he was his novice hurdler to follow and jumpers to follow. Hopefully he backed him, unlike many clouds who he told my readers would win the Hennessy, and he did.
If I was allowed to put him up anti-post, I kind of did put him up anti-post for the Hennessy. I did a 10th follow in the Irish field. But then before the Hennessy, Tom Siegel got a hold of him at the big prices, and I felt, well, at 7-1, I can't really go in for him again. But I should have at least reiterated the comments that I made before. But yes, well done to that.
Yeah, but I actually think he's that well handicapped. I've just dropped my iPad. That's why I think that's why the camera went off for 2 minutes there. Sorry. I'd agree with Rory. He's got to win. He's got to win off that mark.
Well, I think at Ascot, because I was there that day, it was a race which Jolly's cracked it won. He was fine for the first 3 quarters of the race, but he tanked right way through it. So it's no surprise that he wasn't able to finish his race. But obviously, there's a long break between his debut there and running in Doncaster. I think it's about 2 months off. So obviously, he might have had a little bit of an issue.
Changed tactics with him. He went off in front of Ascot, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was free, and he missed a couple of hurdles, and he's been held up now at Doncaster and at Market Racing and settled a bit better as a result. You're just going to see a different horse again. It's always difficult to weigh up the form of those novice hurdles because they can be a little bit confusing. But if you know your horses well enough in the first place, then it gives you more confidence in pinpointing how good they are. And that performance on Sunday suggested that he's as good as I thought he was, and you can write off his early performances.
It's definitely better than a 117 horse.
Oh, miles better. It's an embarrassing one, isn't
it? Paul, any eye catches for you last week? Are you going to flick a coin or something for the bumper today?
No, James normally gets the Gigginstown gig and talks about them. I'll mention that briefly. A couple of mine were bumper winners. I just wanted to mention. I thought Robbins Reef, who scored on the same Market Racing card, was quite good for Nicky Henderson. She was sent off favourite for the Listers race on a debut earlier in the year, so she's obviously been shown plenty at home, and he quickened up stylishly, I thought, off the front end. And I noticed earlier she'd been given an entry in one of the mares races at Punchestown already, one of the early closing races, so obviously well thought of. Paul Nicholls, winner at Taunton yesterday, done it nicely, Persian Delight, but arguably the most exciting bumper horse I've seen for a while. If you haven't seen today's race, and go back and watch the replay of the winner from Punchestown, for Gigginstown and Noel Mead, Nina Carberry, Disco, hugely impressive. Jet, a half brother to Jeski, well touted before his debut recently. A lot of eyes were on him, but this horse was well backed in opposition to him throughout the day, and travelled up sides and then just poured it on, turning in, ended up 15 lengths clear at the line of the second. I think he goes to Limerick for a valuable 4-year-old race next. And certainly looks to have a massive future.
And if you haven't got enough time, then you obviously go to James and look at his Vine. I think it does it in 6 seconds. Hopefully no copyright infringement, because I know a couple of people had a bit of bother with bumpers and Racing UK and see the world. So I think there's a couple of. But James, I think you impressed there as well today. Disco, DISCO, KO.
DISCO, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I thought that's really, really impressive. He just got sort of spot for room at a crucial point, and Nina had to sort of pick him up off the floor almost and get him out. But as soon as she got him out, he just zipped straight past Jet. And that move was really, really impressive, and then went clear off the bend and showed plenty of speed. And I think that was just a really, really exciting performance. And he's definitely another Gigginstown horse that looks potentially top class this season. They have just so many in these bumper races, and luckily not with Willie Mullins. So next season should be quite exciting in Ireland in those novice hurdles.
Just a quick mention at the weekend. I think James, Paul, you both mentioned Days of Heaven a couple of times in the pod, and obviously the weekend's going to be coming up with Bargo Collonge. Paul, what camp are you in? Days of Heaven or Bargo?
Vargo Collonge, I think, just about. I think both of them will be suited by the track. Hopefully, the field won't cut up too much, so it's not a complete dawdle. But yeah, I think the form of Vargo Collonge's run at Cheltenham last time was just slightly bit stronger. It's been ranked a couple of times since, and I know I've been waiting to see him drop back in trip, given how he travelled there last time. So, but two exciting horses, and yeah, it should make for a good race.
James? Brago Collins for you as well?
Well, that form at Cheltenham behind Order Abchow I think is quite strong, and he did seem to just lack the stamina at the end. So this drop back and trip should help. But I do like Days of Heaven a lot, and I think he's probably still quite immature, and he was very difficult at the start, but he's getting better with it every time, and he's had a couple of boosts recently to his form. And I think if he keeps improving at the rate he is doing, I think he can get to the Vega Colonges level and throw down a real challenge. And Saint Descent is the sire of Wait For Me, that impressive bumper horse at Ascot this weekend, and sire of Days of Heaven, and he's the sire of Irish Saint as well, and he could have a double on the Kempton card because he goes for the Pendle, which I think he probably should win, even though I'm not convinced he's a 2.5 mile horse in the long run, but could be an interesting double for another useful French sire, I think.
And Rory, any early gems for the weekend, or is it to download your Irish Field column?
Yeah,
I'll take a picture.
I guess that's how it goes. Yeah, you get in trouble for doing that as well. That's fine. There you go. I see. Nicky Henderson's very well represented in the dog pit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Got bit of
not just Days of Heaven, but he's also got one for the governor.
Yeah, I think Days of Heaven's the intended runner.
Yeah. Of course, they've all got Mr. Green to beat, haven't they? No. They've got 9-year-olds fresh from a busy season of the all weather. Except the belated return to jumps.
David Flood. Do you think he'll recover from his run 10 days ago on the flat?
Well, in fairness, he didn't have a terribly hard time in that mile handicap of 52. He'd also some half-decent flat on a few years ago. But in all seriousness, no, I wouldn't name my college Slim Aston in that race. I'll be writing the Betfair chase up for the sponsors as well, so I'll have to keep my powder dry.
Well, there you go. Hopefully we'll read that on Saturday and then point a few winners that way. Paul, James, Roy, thanks for taking your time out this evening. Well, obviously we'll have the Betfair chase, maybe something in the Adonis and something in the Dovecote to look forward to at Cheltenham festivals or the Aintree Festival. If I don't think Days of Heaven has even got a Cheltenham Supreme entry, so maybe pointed towards Aintree. But as I said, gents, thanks for taking your time out for this evening, and see you same time next week.
Cheers, man.